sick intro tune. I can't believe somebody went through all the work of making that. Welcome, listeners, to the Fiction Friends podcast. I am one of the co-hosts, Mackenzie Elaine.
And I'm the other co-host, Chanse.
That makes two of us that are sitting at this table right now. We're part of a podcast. A podcast that does what, Chance?
A podcast that goes through and reads different stories, whether it be in the public domain or something we write ourselves.
Something that we baby bird from our minds into your ears.
Sort of like mother hen, baby birds, the delicious, nutritious elixir of life down someone's throat.
Also known as worm meat.
I was thinking skull, but yeah!
Yes! Baby bird some skull into your baby's mouth.
You know, I wonder how many weeks we're going to be able to keep that joke until it gets stale.
It's kind of already stale.
I don't know what you're talking about. I think it's as fresh when I crack that tin. Alrighty. So, last week we wrote our own stories. I feel like they went well.
Yeah, they were definitely stories. Man, I didn't realize how just how heavy my story was with the dick and cum and, well, I mean, I realized like how much there was like while I was writing it, but like reading it out and then like listening to it over and over and over again to edit it, man, you hear those words come out of my mouth that much, I'm God, I've ascended.
It's the type of language that would put a sailor to shame. And then, obviously, it's same with my story, characters whose names don't stay consistent through the entire story and stuff like that. But you know what? That's what happens when you're on the grind.
That's what happens when you write a story in, like, an hour?
Yeah, 2 hours. But you know what? That's the best part. Speed writing is a completely new type of medium.
I was trying to like really build you up there. Like, nah, he did it. Like, you wrote that story in like what a minute? Like, you're so fast. You speed run that story.
Lady, you heard it here first. I'm fast. Anyway, we've got a couple stories for you today. This time we thought we'd go into the wheel well of some proper authors. And speaking of wells, I believe you had a story from a well.
I have a story from an H.G. Wells.
Ah, yes, Mr. H.G. Wells.
Yeah, H.G. Wells. Wow, what a man, what a writer, what a guy who lived a long time ago. I'm going to be reading a story called The Red Room from H.G. Wells.
You want to give me a little spice as to what this is about, or you want to kind of just like let me absorb it as we can?
Well, I mean, you can't go through your life without hearing this fellow's name. What a prolific writer he was, writer of short stories and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
And oh boy, this story was published in 1896.
Oh, 1896.
Idler.
So he wrote this while my grandma was in school.
Yeah, this is centuries. We've really come a long way, and I want to say this guy comes off, at least, I don't know nearly as much about his personal history as I do about Lovecraft's history, but I can say he comes off significantly less racist than Lovecraft.
Wait, who's the name of the guy who might be Jack the Ripper?
I have no idea what you're talking about right now. This is fresh to me. I think Jack the Ripper was just like mysterious. He just like killed hookers.
Well, yeah, but there's you know what? I'm gonna search it up and I'll link it into the description because he has a very similar name. H.H. Holmes. H.H. Holmes.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. You know what? This has nothing to do with
him though. Like, well, I mean, I'm interested in the tangent now.
Well, I pretty much told you all there was. A guy named H.G. Wells, or not H.G. Wells, H.H. Holmes. Yeah. He was kind of an author. He was sort of a figure around London back in the time, right around when Jack the Ripper started slaying.
Oh, and he may have been slashing up hookers.
Yeah.
He may have been the Jack. Well, he was actually the H.H., and now we're going to be reading some of the H.G. Wells, The Red Room. It's a spooky one. So, if you've got a safety blanket, if you've got a loved one to hold close, if you've got a pacifier to put in your mouth, if you've got something else to put in your mouth, perhaps a nice fresh tin of Skull.
Sponsored by Skull.
You weren't thinking it was going to go there, did you?
I didn't, but that's probably just I wasn't thinking of steaks.
I'm gonna ask you to. Do you wanna help me do some of the voices in this? Yeah.
I'd be more than willing to.
Yeah. Do you want to be? So there's three kind of haunting presences in this story. There's a man with a withered arm. There's a creepy old lady, and there's a man who coughs.
Oh, I want to be withery.
You want to be withery? All right, you can take withery, and I will be the rest of the characters.
All right. Balls in your court.
I can assure you, said I, that it will take a very tangible ghost to frighten me. And I stood up before the fire with my glass in my hand.
It is your own choosing,
said the man with the withered arm, and glanced at me askance. 28 years, said I have lived, and never a ghost have I seen as yet. The old woman sat staring hard into the fire, her pale eyes wide open.
Aye,
She broke in.
and 28 years you have lived and never seen the likes of this house, I reckon. There are many things to see when one is still but 28.
Strong rhyme.
Yeah, this, it was written in the 1800s, so there's definitely going to be some language that people aren't going to be familiar with. You don't hear the word askance very much.
No, but it's a good word.
Yeah, it is. It is a good word. This guy does write a lot of words to say very little.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's very common short story writing at
That's
the time.
common for writers.
Yeah, true enough. 8 and funny. She swayed her head slowly from side to side.
Many things to see and sorrow for.
I half suspected the old people were trying to enhance the spiritual terrors of their house by droning insistence. I put down my empty glass on the table and looked about the room and caught a glimpse of myself, abbreviated and broadened to an impossible sturdiness, in the queer old mirror at the end of the room. Well, I said, if I see anything tonight, I shall be so much the wiser, for I come to the business with an open mind.
It is your own choosing.
Old Withery's really a man of few words.
Yeah, he's a withery arm, withery mind.
He's all about consent, though.
Yes.
It's got to be your own choosing.
H.G. Wells, woke as fuck for 1893.
So woke. I'm not actually gonna. I don't know if he was woke or not, but he seems pretty alright. Said the man with the withered arm once more. I heard the faint sound of a stick and a shambling step on the flags of the passage outside. The door creaked on its hinges as a second old man entered, more bent, more wrinkled, more aged than even the first.
More withery?
Well, not more withered. He doesn't have a withery arm, but oh boy, he is certainly more wrinkled and more aged. He supported himself by the help of a crutch, so maybe he's got a wither leg. His eyes were covered by a shade.
Like a cloak?
I think it means like a literal shadow is like cast across his eyes.
Oh.
And his lower lip, half averted, hung pale and pink from his decaying yellow teeth. He made straight for an armchair on the opposite side of the table, sat down clumsily, and began to cough. The man, I feel like it's a tuberculosis cough too. Like,
oh yeah, real
blood
buttery.
is coming up, like it's thick. The man with the withered hand gave the newcomer a short glance of positive dislike. The old woman took no notice of his arrival, but remained with her eyes fixed steadily on the fire.
She's got that thing where it's like she can't look at the sun, so she's just looking at the next brightest thing, like a moth lady.
I suppose. It is, it's withery.
I said, it is your own choosing,
said the man with the withered hand, when the coughing had ceased for a while. It's my own choosing, I answered. The man with the shade became aware of my presence for the first time. Maybe a shade is something else that I don't know of.
Like, the only other thing I could think of is like a shroud.
Yeah, maybe it's a hat. Maybe it's just like a hat with a little brim. The man with the shade became aware of my presence for the first time, and threw his head back for a moment, and sideways to see me. I caught a momentary glimpse of his eyes, small and bright and inflamed.
Oh, he's
Then-
definitely covered in the tuberc.
Then he began to cough and sputter again. The old tuberc.
Why don't you drink?
Said the man with the withered arm, pushing the beer toward him. The man with the shade poured out a glassful with a shaking hand, that splashed half as much again on the deal table. A monstrous shadow of him crouched upon the wall, and mocked his action as he poured and drank. I must confess, I had scarcely expected these grotesque custodians. There is, to my mind, something inhuman in senility, something crouching and atavistic. That means of an age gone by.
Yeah, long ago.
Yeah, I looked that up a while ago. The human qualities seem to drop from old people insensibly day by day. The three of them made me feel uncomfortable with their gaunt silences, their bent carriage, their evident unfriendliness to me and to one another. And that night, perhaps, I was in the mood for uncomfortable impressions. I resolved to get away from their vague foreshadowings of the evil things upstairs. "If," said I, "you will show me to this haunted room of yours, I will make myself comfortable there." The old man with the cough jerked his head back so suddenly that it startled me, and shot another glance of his red eyes at me, out from the darkness under the shade, but no one answered me. I waited a minute, glancing from one to the other. The old woman started like a dead body, glaring into the fire with lackluster eyes. "If," I said, a little louder, "if you will show me to this haunted room of yours, I will relieve you from the task of entertaining me."
There is a candle on the slab outside the door,
said the man with the withered hand, looking at my feet as he addressed me.
If you go to the red room tonight,
This night of all nights,
said the old woman softly.
you go alone.
Very well, I answered shortly. And which way do I go?
You go along the passage for a bit,
said he, nodding his head on his shoulder at the door,
until you come to a spiral staircase. On the second landing is a door covered with a green vase. Go through that and down the long corridor to the end, and the red room is on your left up the steps.
Have I got that right? I said, and repeated his directions. He corrected me in one particular.
And you are really going?
Said the man with the shade, looking at me again for the third time with that queer, unnatural tilting of the face.
This night of all nights,
whispered the old woman. It is what I came for, I said, and moved towards the door. As I did so, the old man with the shade rose and staggered round the table, so to be closer to the others and to the fire. At the door I turned and looked at them, and saw they were all close together, dark against the firelight, staring at me over their shoulders with an intent expression on their ancient faces. Good night, I said, setting the door open.
It is your own choosing,
said the man with the withered arm. What a great way to start the story, with those, fucking creepy old people.
All old people are creepy.
Yeah, and I mean, he goes into describing, how terrifying, senility is and all that.
Yeah, it's fucking dementia and shit is scary as fuck.
But, especially in the context of the story, and, because it was written for, spooky short stories or whatever, people going into it knew that it was scary. So I think a lot of people make the assumption right off the bat that those three are ghosts, or are somehow, specters haunting this place as well. We actually know very little about the place that we're in right now.
We know we're in a building, and we know there's a quote-unquote haunted room.
Yeah, we know we're in a building with a haunted room, but we don't know what kind of building we're in. It's all very, keyhole fiction. We as the audience know very little.
Mm-hmm.
We're getting to peek through the keyhole, if you will. I left the door wide open until the candle was well alight, and then shut them in and walked down the chilly, echoing passage. I must confess that the oddness of these 3 old pensioners, in whose charge her ladyship had left the castle, and the deep-toned, old-fashioned furniture of the housekeeper's room, in which they had foregathered, had affected me curiously, in spite of my effort to keep myself at a matter-of-fact phase. They seemed to belong to another age, an older age, an age when things spiritual were indeed to be feared, and when common sense was uncommon, an age when omens and witches were credible, and ghosts beyond denying. Their very existence, thought I, is spectral. The cut of their clothing, fashions born in dead brains, the ornaments and conveniences of the room about them, even are ghostly. The thoughts of vanished men which still haunt, rather than participate in the world of today. And the passage I was in, long and shadowy, with a film of moisture glistening on the wall, was as gaunt and cold as a thing that is dead and rigid. But with an effort I sent such thoughts to the right about. The long, draughty subterranean passage was chilly and dusty, and my candle flared and made the shadows cower and quiver. The echoes rang up and down the spiral staircase, and a shadow came up over me, and another fled before me into the darkness overhead. Candles cast spooky shadows.
They do. Candles dance light.
I came to the wide landing, and stopped there for a moment, listening to the rustling that I fancied I'd heard creeping behind me, and then, satisfied of the absolute silence, pushed open the unwilling baize-covered door, and stood in the silent corridor. So we now know, kind of, a bit more about our setting.
Yeah, we know we're in a castle.
That is owned, now at least, by some ladyship, and she has left those old people in charge of taking care of the castle.
Mm-hmm.
They're like groundskeepers, custodial staff.
They've probably been there since the fucking place was built.
Probably. The effect was scarcely what I had expected, for the moonlight, coming in by the great window on the grand staircase, picked out everything in vivid black shadow or reticulated silvery illumination. Everything seemed in its proper position. The house might have been deserted on the yesterday instead of 12 months ago. There were candles in the sockets of the sconces, and whatever dust had gathered on the carpets or upon the polished flooring was distributed so evenly as to be invisible in my candlelight. A waiting stillness was over everything. I was about to advance. Pardon me. I was about to advance, and stopped abruptly. A bronze group stood upon the landing, hidden from me by a corner of the wall, but its shadow fell with marvelous distinctness upon the white paneling, and gave me the impression of someone crouching to waylay me. The thing jumped upon my attention suddenly. I stood rigid for half a moment, perhaps. Then, with my hand in my pocket that held the revolver, I advanced, only to discover a Ganymede and eagle glistening in the moonlight. That incident, for a time, restored my nerve, and a dim porcelain Chinaman on the boule table, whose head rocked as I passed, scarcely startled me. I really like that little trick of writing there, when he's saying that the thing jumped upon his attention suddenly. Mm-hmm. So it's like kind of, it's tricking the reader, like kind of putting you into a mind like, oh my goodness, is he about to be like set upon?
I really like that he's sitting around going, he's like, something caught my attention, so I have my revolver.
Well, like, I don't believe in ghosts, but just in case, I brought this gun.
Guns kill ghosts?
Could be.
It killed the thing that made a ghost.
Certainly, and you know what? Not to compare, not to make too direct a comparison between a story that you wrote in 2 hours and this work by H.G. Wells, but you know, hands having bitch, that the handless elf. See, very very similar to this little piece of writing with the with the being set upon his attention. You know, it's kind of a misdirect, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I do like that in writing. I think that's something that's very fun. Oh yeah, and for people who don't know, a Ganymede, an eagle, is just it's a figure from like Greek mythology. Ganymede is a cupbearer to the gods, very sexy. The door of the Red Room and the steps up to it were in a shadowy corner. I moved my candle from side to side in order to see clearly the nature of the recess in which I stood, before opening the door. Here it was, I thought. Oh, no, not I thought. Here it was, thought I, that my predecessor was found. And the memory of that story gave me a sudden twinge of apprehension. Here it was, thought I, that my predecessor was found, and the memory of that story gave me a sudden twinge of apprehension. I glanced over my shoulder at the black Ganymede in the moonlight, and opened the door of the Red Room, rather hastily, with my face half turned to the pallid silence of the corridor. I entered, closed the door behind me at once, turned the key I found in the lock within, and stood with the candle held aloft, surveying the scene of my vigil. The great Red Room of Lorraine Castle, in which the young Duke had died, or rather in which he had begun his dying, for he had opened the door and fallen headlong down the steps I had just ascended. That had been the end of his vigil, of his gallant attempt to conquer the ghostly tradition of the place, and never, I thought, had apoplexy better served the ends of superstition. There were other and older stories that clung to the room, back to the half-incredible beginning of it all, the tale of the timid wife, and the tragic end that came to her husband's jest of frightening her, and looking round that huge shadowy room, with its black window bays and recesses and alcoves, its dusty brown-red hangings and dark, gigantic furniture, one could well understand the legends that had sprouted in its black corners, its germinating darkness. My candle was a little tongue of light in the vastness of the chamber. Its rays failed to pierce to the opposite end of the room, and left an ocean of dull red mystery and suggestion. Sentinel shadows and watching darkness beyond its island of light, and the stillness of desolation brooded over it all.
Okay, so a couple of things. We just found out a little more. We found out someone's died in here before.
Yeah,
So that's...
the Duke, who is presumably either the husband or like the nephew, somehow related to the ladyship who owned the castle.
Lady Lorraine, I can only assume. And he died to falling down some stairs.
Yeah, he got so spooked in this red room that he fell down the stairs and died.
It's a hell of a way to go.
Must be a real spooky room. And we get kind of a vague suggestion that a very, very long time ago, some man tried to, like, pull a prank on his wife in here, and it went too far and she died. I believe that was kind of the inference prior. But also, man, the language that he uses, the stillness of desolation brooded over it all. That's... Damn.
That's I'm 14 and edgy writing.
Well, I mean, like, you know, give H.G. Wells a little bit of credit here.
Sorry, I'm 214 and this is edgy.
Yeah, there you go. I must confess, some impalpable quality of that ancient room disturbed me. I tried to fight the feeling down. I resolved to make a systematic examination of the place, and so, by leaving nothing to the imagination, dispel the fanciful suggestions of the obscurity before they obtained a hold upon me. After satisfying myself of the fastening of the door, I began to walk about the room, peering round Each... Oh my goodness, sorry, no. I must apologize. You see, I began to walk round the room, peering round. He just threw his phone across the entire house.
Doesn't matter, it's gonna get cut.
No, I mean, I just need to let the audience know that Chance just threw his phone across our entire home.
Wait, we don't live together. They don't know that.
You threw your phone across an entire home.
It doesn't matter, it'll be cut. Future person, cut this.
I began to walk round the room, peering round each article of furniture, tucking up the valances of the bed, and opening its curtains wide. In one place there was a distinct echo to my footsteps. The noises I made seemed so little that they enhanced rather than broke the silence of the place. I pulled up the blinds and examined the fastenings of the several windows. Attracted by the fall of a particle of dust, I leaned forward and looked up at the blackness of the wide chimney. Then, trying to preserve my scientific attitude of mind, I walked round and began tapping the oak paneling for any secret opening. But I desisted before reaching the alcove. I saw my face in a mirror. White. There were 2 big mirrors in the room, each with a pair of sconces bearing candles. And on the mantel shelf, too, were candles in china candlesticks. All these I lit, one after the other. The fire was laid, an unexpected consideration from the old housekeeper, and I lit it, to keep down any disposition to shiver. And when it was burning well, I stood round with my back to it and regarded the room again.
Man, the language in this, you can definitely feel that it's from 1893 because, oh fucking boy.
He's always standing around and moving around and, like, it's round.
Yeah, see, as much as people say that slang terminology kills language, ultimately slang terminology is language.
Yeah, like, the English language, all languages evolve as time goes on. But I do love stuff like even just saying regarded instead of like he looked around. Like it sounds nicer.
It's true.
I had pulled up the chintz-covered armchair and a table to form a kind of barricade before me. On this lay my revolver, ready to hand. My precise examination had done me a little good, but I still found the remoter darkness of the place and its perfect stillness too stimulating for the imagination. So this guy's like, yeah, I'm gonna keep a scientific mind, lights every candle in the room, builds a little barricade, pulls out his gun. Okay, ghosts.
Come at me! There's no fucking hidden walls that can hide you. The door is blocked.
Like he took that little look for the hidden doors and stuff. I think that's because like his scientific mind was telling him that, like, somebody tried to kill the Duke.
Oh, see, in my head, the way I was imagining it is, this red room is some sort of an attraction. So they're like, oh, you don't want to go in there? And then even, say, some of the fucking corpse people at the beginning would, like, be sneaking in and fucking with people to make it seem haunted.
Well, I don't think it's an attraction so much. Like, this castle, like, people in, like, estates are a thing in the UK. So, like, this is probably, this is an era long separated from when this castle was, like, actually used as a castle or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And the lady who owns it might not be Lady Lorraine. Like, if it's Lorraine Castle, chances of it actually still being in, like, the original bloodline is pretty slim.
Yeah, also it stated that the house had been abandoned for a year.
Yeah, like, it's only looked after by these, like, 3 old people or whatever. So, the Duke was trying to, dispel the myth that it was haunted. And he got iced. And I think this guy was probably thinking, yeah, man, somebody probably just, like, assassinated the Duke in here and used the mystery, the ghost of the Red Room to cover it up. But, clearly this fellow is not maintaining his scientific mind.
No, I'm 100% with him. I'm a proprietor of I don't believe in ghosts. They scare the fucking piss out of me.
Yeah, I don't believe in ghosts, but places can be haunted as shit.
I mean, hey, I don't believe in ghosts. I ain't gonna go into an abandoned barn.
Nah, man, like, I don't know, people go on tours of, concentration camps and stuff like that. I feel like there is no place on Earth more haunted. Like,
yeah, if ghosts were to exist, they'd be there.
They would be there by the drove. Good
Maybe
God.
gases kill ghosts.
That's pretty fucked up. That's pretty fucked up. That's pretty fucked up. The echoing of the stir and crackling of the fire was no sort of comfort to me. The shadow in the alcove at the end of the room began to display the undefinable quality of a presence. That odd suggestion of a lurking, living thing that comes so easily in silence and solitude. And to reassure myself, I walked with a candle into it and satisfied myself that there was nothing tangible there. I stood that candle upon the floor of the alcove and left it in that position. So he's like, I saw a spooky shadow, so I took my candle over to see that there was nothing there. And I just left my candle there just to make sure that nothing got there.
Yeah, now nothing can be here.
Scientific mind, I am not scared. By this time, I was in a state of considerable nervous tension. Although, to my reason, there was no adequate cause for my condition. My mind, however, was perfectly clear. I postulated, quite unreservedly, that nothing supernatural could happen. And to pass the time, I began stringing some rhymes together. In Goldsby fashion.
Oh, I thought that was his first rhyme word. I was like, you got some fucking couplets going if you're trying to rhyme with Ingoldsby.
Yeah, no, I think he's just doing some little ditties to himself here, trying to pass the time. No, there's nothing supernatural here. Do 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 do.
Fuck no ghosts exist, but if they hit my gun, we'll get them.
Better run, outrun my gun. Concerning the original legend of the place. A few I spoke aloud, but the echoes were not pleasant. For the same reason, I also abandoned, after a time, a conversation with myself upon the impossibility of ghosts and haunting. So, like,
hey, me, you remember that time when ghosts didn't exist? Yeah.
Yeah. Like, he's trying to have a conversation with himself, trying to rhyme, but the echoes in the room are just too spooky for him to, like, keep making noise. He's like, but, like, all my noises of, like, walking around and stuff, they're so quiet that they make, like, the quietness of the room even more quiet. But when I talk to myself, it echoes and it gives me a spook. This guy is terrified as shit, and I love it. I love the writing of it.
Whoa. He can't be terrified. Ghosts don't exist.
That's not real.
He's hidden it super scientifically. Definitely no such thing as an irrational fear.
Yeah, he tried to have a conversation with himself upon the impossibility of ghosts and haunting.
What is fear of ghosts in, like, a phobia sense?
I don't know. Gastophobia?
Ectophobia?
Cuckophobia? Ectocuckophobia?
Hey.
That's it. It's a full circle cast.
The fullest circle a week in a making.
Hell yeah. My mind reverted to the three old and distorted people downstairs, and I tried to keep it upon that topic. The somber reds and greys of the room troubled me. Even with its 7 candles, the place was merely dim. The light of the alcove flaring in the draught, and the fire flickering, kept the shadows and penumbra perpetually shifting and stirring in noiseless, flighty dance. Casting about for a remedy, I recalled the wax candles I had seen in the corridor, and with a slight effort, carrying a candle and leaving the door open, I walked out into the moonlight, and presently returned with as many as 10. There's like too spooky, more candles.
Wait, was 10 every candle he could find? Is he, like, pulling these off of sconces in the hallway?
Yeah, he's just grabbing candles out of the hallway to light the room up more.
The withered man's like, hey, you can't do that. You gonna stop me?
Yeah, they ain't leaving that room, I don't think.
Yeah.
And, you know, I think the thing that really gets me about this particular passage here is, oh my goodness, let me try and find it here.
Oh my goodness.
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. 5. Looking in the penumbra, stirring the darkness, a slight effort, carrying a candle, the door open. In the moonlight, presently return as many as 10. Oh yeah, the room originally had 7 candles, which there may be some amount of significance to there being 7 candles in the room. They're Bible passages about like the 7 golden candlesticks, things like that. Potentially, those old people, maybe they know a little bit more, and they had the 7 candlesticks set up in there to maybe keep the ghosts away, or
Holify it
like
a little more.
Yeah. It's these little things that you can add to writing. These like little significant words or significant images or symbols. Even like Ganymede and the eagle is potentially, you could see it as like a symbol of like beauty and freedom.
Yeah.
And like there's a lot of ways to look at those. That really adds a lot to writing. And people really cared about it a lot more in this time. It was a lot more. Writing was to be analyzed and like to be read carefully.
Yeah.
Which certainly isn't what we go for, but I think there's a special kind of beauty to that.
Whoa! I don't know what you're talking about. My writing is meant to be absorbed, whether it be through an IV drip or
baby birded into someone's mouth.
Hey, there we
absorbed
are.
via the submucosa. You know, there are several drugs that you absorb via your submucosa. Learn about it.
Is that fucking that's snoring or are you fucking?
Your submucosa is the mucous membrane underneath your tongue.
Yeah, I knew that. I was just making sure that our viewer didn't.
Yeah, of course. I studied chemistry. What a waste.
I studied.
These I put in the various knickknacks of China, which the room was sparsely adorned, and lit and placed them where the shadows had lain deepest. Some on the floor, some in the window recesses, arranging and rearranging them until at last my 17 candles were so placed that not an inch of the room, but had the direct light of at least one of them. It occurred to me that when the ghost came, I could warn him not to trip over them. He's a humorous fellow. He's trying to keep it light in here. He's like, when the ghost comes up, tell him not to trip over all these fucking candles I've laid out.
Yeah, ghosts aren't real, but if they are real and he comes here, I'm going to shoot him and tell him not to trip.
The room was now quite brightly illuminated. There was something very cheering and reassuring in these little silent streaming flames, and to notice their steady diminution of length offered me an occupation, and gave me a reassuring sense of the passage of time. Even with that, however, the brooding expectation of the vigil weighed heavily enough upon me. I stood watching the minute hand of my watch creep towards midnight. Then something happened in the alcove. I did not see the candle go out. I simply turned and saw that the darkness was there, as one might start and see the unexpected presence of a stranger. The black shadow had sprung back to its place. "By Jove!" I said aloud, recovering from my surprise.
Oh,
by Jove!
Who is Jove?
Jehovah?
See that's what my head shot to.
I don't know. I think it's like a religious thing.
Yeah, well, it's kind of like instead
sure.
of saying by God,
Yeah,
because,
yeah,
in vain.
That draft's a strong one. And taking the matchbox from the table, I walked across the room in a leisurely manner to relight the corner again. I like how all of this, talking to himself and leisurely walking over. He's trying to keep himself sane here.
Oh yeah. Well, he's
trying to convince himself that it's not a haunting here.
I feel like it's definitely an older talk, like the using Jove instead of God, but it also kind of seems like he's like, yeah, I'm buddy with God. God wouldn't let me be haunted. Ghosts don't exist.
Yeah, and it's mild language, right? He's trying not to let himself be extra scared. Oh, by Jove! Go relight the candle.
It's drafty.
What a draft! As he's got his hand on his gun and he's shaking.
See, in my head, he's got Doom Guy gun just forward the entire time.
I think that this short story would make such an excellent it could be adapted into just a wonderful little play or a screen.
I could see this being an awesome little, like an episode, and not Mr. Science Theater, like
It's like a little vignette program.
yeah, well, Night Gallery.
Yeah,
That's what I was
yeah,
thinking.
absolutely.
Night Gallery.
Yeah, there's tons of stuff where, I don't know, I think it would take like a really good character actor to play this fellow, like to portray like the advancement of his fear and stuff like that, and like his increasing paranoia. But man, it could be so good. Anyway, it's gonna be quite a bit of a chunk here. So my first match would not strike, and as I succeeded with the second, something seemed to blink on the wall before me. I turned my head involuntarily and saw that the 2 candles on the little table by the fireplace were extinguished. I rose at once to my feet. "Odd," I said. "Did I do that myself in a flash of absent-mindedness?" I walked back, relit one, and as I did so, I saw the candle on the right sconce of one of the mirrors wink and go right out, and almost immediately its companion followed it. The flames vanished, as if the wick had suddenly nipped between a finger and thumb, leaving the wick neither glowing nor smoking, but black. While I stood gaping at the candle, as I stood gaping, the candle at the foot of the bed went out, and the shadows seemed to take another step toward me. "This won't do," said I, and the first one, and then another candle on the mantel-shelf followed. "What's up?" I cried, with a queer high tone getting into my voice somehow. At that, the candle on the corner of the wardrobe went out, and the one I had relit in the alcove followed. "Steady on," said I. "Those candles are wanted," speaking with a half-hysterical facetiousness, and scratching away at the match all the while. "For the mantel candlesticks." My hands trembled so much that twice I missed the rough paper of the matchbox. As the mantel emerged from the darkness again, 2 candles in the remoter end of the room were eclipsed. But with the same match I also relit the larger mirror candles, and those on the floor near the doorway, so that, for the moment, I seemed to gain on the extinctions. But then in a noiseless volley, there vanished 4 lights at once in different corners of the room. I struck another match in quivering haste, and stood hesitating whither to take it. As I stood undecided, the invisible hand seemed to sweep out the 2 candles on the table. With a cry of terror, I dashed at the alcove, then into the corner, and then into the window, relighting 3 as 2 more vanished by the fireplace. And then, perceiving a better way, I dropped the matches on the iron-bound deed box in the corner, and caught up the bedroom candlestick. With this, I avoided the delay of striking matches, but for all that steady progress of extinction went on, and the shadows I feared and fought against returned and crept in upon me. First, a step gained on this side of me, then on that. I was now almost frantic with the horror of the coming darkness, and my self-possession deserted me. I leapt, panting from candle to candle in a vain struggle against that remorseless advance. I brushed myself against I bruised my thigh against the table. I sent a chair headlong, stumbled and fell and whisked the cloth from a table in my fall. My candle rolled away from me, and I snatched another as I rose. Abruptly, this was blown out, as I swung it off the table by the wind of my sudden movement, and immediately the 2 remaining candles followed. But there was light still in the room, a red light that streamed across the ceiling and staved off the shadows from me. The fire! Of course, I could still thrust my candle between the bars and relight it. I turned to where the flames were still dancing between the glowing coals and splashing red reflections upon and splashing red reflections upon the furniture, made 2 steps toward the grate, and incontinently the flames dwindled and vanished. The glow vanished. The reflections rushed together and disappeared, and as I thrust the candle between the bars, darkness closed upon me like the shutting of an eye, wrapped about me in a stifling embrace, sealed my vision, and crushed the last vestiges of self-possession from my brain. And it was not only palpable darkness, but intolerable terror. The candle fell from my hands. I flung out my arms in a vain effort to thrust upon that ponderous blackness away from me, and lifting up my voice, screamed with all my might, once, twice, thrice. Then I think I must have staggered to my feet. I know I thought suddenly of the moonlit corridor, and with my head bowed and my arms over my face, made a stumbling run for the door. But I had forgotten the exact position of the door, and struck myself heavily against the corner of the bed. I staggered back, turned, and was either struck or struck myself against some other bulky furnishing. I have a vague memory of battering myself thus to and fro in the darkness, of a heavy blow at last upon my forehead, of a horrible sensation of falling that lasted an age, of my last frantic effort to keep my footing, and then I remembered no more. I opened my eyes in the daylight. My head was roughly bandaged, and the man with the withered hand was watching my face. I looked about me, trying to remember what had happened, and for a space I could not recollect. I rolled my eyes into the corner and saw the old woman, no longer abstracted and no longer terrible, pouring out some drops of medicine from a little blue vial into a glass. "Where am I?" I said. "I seem to remember you, yet I cannot remember who you are." They told me then, and I heard of the haunted Red Room as one who hears a tale.
"We found you at dawn,"
said he,
"and there was blood upon your forehead and lips."
I wondered that I had ever disliked him. The 3 of them in the daylight seemed commonplace, old folk enough. The man with the green shade had his head bent, as one who sleeps. It was very slowly I recovered the memory of my experience.
"You believe now,"
said the man with the withered hand,
"that the room is haunted."
He spoke no longer as one who greets an intruder, but as one who consoles a friend. "Yes," said I, "the room is haunted."
"And you've seen it? And we who have been here all of our lives have never set eyes upon it, because we have never dared. Tell us, is it truly the old Earl who—"
"No," I said. "It is not."
"I told you so,"
said the old lady, with the glass in her hand.
"It's his poor young countess who is frightened."
"It is not," said I. "There is neither ghost of Earl nor ghost of Countess in that room. There is no ghost there at all, but far worse. Something impalpable."
"Well,"
they said. "The worst of all the things that haunt poor mortal men," said I, "and that is, in all its nakedness, fear. Fear that will not have light nor sound, that will not bear with reason, that deafens and darkens and overwhelms. It followed me through the corridor. It fought against me in the room." I stopped abruptly. There was an interval of silence. My hand went up to my bandages. The candles went out, one after another, and I fled. Then the man with the shade lifted his face sideways to see me and spoke.
That is it,
said he.
I knew that was it. A power of darkness, to put such a curse upon a home. It lurks there always. You can feel it, even in the daytime. Even of a bright summer's day. In the hangings and the curtains, keeping behind you however you face about it. In the dusk it creeps in the corridor, and follows you, so that you dare not turn. It is even as you say, fear itself is in that room. Black fear. And there it will be, so long as this house of sin endures.
The end.
That's a hell of a story.
That's heavy as hell, isn't it?
Yeah, dude, that's I'm not gonna lie, I super enjoyed it. I loved the fucking cop-out at the end where the old man's like, yes, that's what it is, darkness.
Yes, I've known all along that it was a demon of darkness that haunts the room.
Pure fear.
Yeah, there's fear there. It's all fear. Or maybe it's just a wind that blows out candles. We never know.
You know, I thoroughly enjoyed that.
I think horror stories where you don't get the answer are the spookiest ones.
Ambiguity causes extra spook.
Absolutely. Big time. Now, we've got kind of something special here coming up next.
Absolutely we do. But before that, a word from our sponsors. Anyway, Mac, we got something else a little special. With your room, you were more than welcoming enough to allow me to do one of the voices in your story. Now, what I've done for us this week is I kind of went a little more on the inspiration side of things. I took a story.
Try hard.
I tried to. Maybe not very well.
I think it's awesome.
Now, there's only one real way to figure out if this is going to work, and, hopefully all of our viewers appreciate that I, at the very least, tried. So, H.G. Wells, an amazing writer, known far and wide for his different short stories, books, and stuff the sort.
Yeah, very, historically important, for literature.
Now, I figured, in the same vein, I should, get a proper story this time. Not saying that anything from the SPZ organization isn't proper.
SPC?
Is it not the SPC?
SCP. You were going for SPCA there.
The fucking PCPG club.
Yeah, fish of ultimate wisdom.
Snort PCP. Let's go. Anyway, with that, I decided to find a story that was in the public domain from an accredited author, and it turns out there was one story by a writer you might not have heard of him. He's not very well known. Mr. Isaac Asimov.
Isaac Asimov?
Yeah, Isaac Asimov.
Yeah, I've never heard of that guy. He's probably not a doctor or a physicist. Or
he definitely didn't pull a Simpsons and write about shit that happened thousands of years later.
Yeah, it was thousands. Yeah, no, definitely not super important. Or
that's how science fiction works.
So there was one story of his that he did not renew the publication, the copyright
it wasn't even that he didn't renew it. It was the publishers of the story originally did not renew it.
Oh, there you go. How handy. Because he lived for quite some time.
He did. He died at the ripe old age of 86.
Goddamn.
Yeah, and for being
as ponderous a fellow, guys like that usually have high blood pressure.
Oh, he probably did. But what I did is I took this publication. The story is called The Youth. Now, there happened to be just enough talking in this that I figured, why not try and convert it into a little more of a play setup? Now, in doing that, I've set up all different characters and everything for people to read, and we will link to this as well in the description in case you guys want to look at it and be like, wow, this guy fucking sucks at his job and should do something else. But you know what? That's awesome. So, would you be willing to play a couple of characters for me?
Yeah, I will play some characters.
All right. I'm just gonna throw them out to you. Would you like to play Red or Slim?
Well, I am Slim, and you're wearing red, so.
I am. Oh, perfect. Okay. So now, would you like to be an astronomer or an industrialist? It's kind of like an RPG right now.
Okay.
Choose your class.
Choose your job. You remember how old RPGs used to have job systems instead of class systems?
Yeah.
Choose your job. I'm gonna be an astronomer.
All right, so you're Slim, you're an astronomer. Now I got one more for you. Do you want to be a merchant or do you want to be an explorer?
Oh my goodness. I'll be a merchant.
Okay, so
Get a little skeevy.
we got
I'm
a
gonna be
merchant, we got an
Ferengi.
astronomer, and he's Slim. So you are a rogue?
Yeah.
Perfect. So with that means I will be humbly taking up the roles of Red, an industrialist, and an explorer.
Oh, so there was a comma between red and industrialist there, right? Red isn't industrialist?
Yes.
Okay. Cool.
So with that, everybody, I would like to welcome you to our rendition of Isaac Asimov's The Youth. You want to know what I forgot? I didn't mention to people something about the story. So this story, super long reading it one person. It's a 12-part mini story. I guess that's called a
It's
short
like a
story.
novella, I think.
Yeah.
It's kind of a novella. It's like 100 pages, I think.
I think it's...
It's like 50? 50 pages?
Yeah, 40, 50.
It's a short story.
Yeah, but within that, I was not able to, and by not able to, I mean I did not physically have the energy in my body to do the entirety of the story all at once.
You're doing the first 3 parts, right?
That is correct.
Sweet. I mean, yeah, you get a good taste of pretty much all the characters in the story from the first 3 parts.
So now, without any more interruptions, we now present to you Isaac Asimov, The Youth. There was a spatter of pebbles against the window, and the youngster stirred in his sleep. Another, and he was awake. He'd sat up stiffly in bed. Seconds had passed while he interpreted his strange surroundings. He wasn't in his own home, of course. He was out in the country. It was colder than it should be, and there was green at the window. Slam! The youngster bounded to the open window. Slim was not his real name, but the new friend that he had met the day before had needly only one look at him and his slight figure, but to say, "You're Slim. I'm Red." Red wasn't his real name either, but its appropriateness was obvious. They were friends instantly, with the quick, quite unquestioning friendship that young ones, not quite in adolescence, before even the first stains of adulthood began to make their appearance.
Hi, Red.
Quiet! You might want to wake somebody. Slim noticed all at once that the sun scarcely topped the low hills in the east, that the shadows were long and soft, and that the grass was wet.
What's the matter?
Red only waved for him to come out. Slim dressed quickly, gladly confining his morning wash to a momentary sprinkle of a little lukewarm water. He let the air dry the exposed portions of his body as he ran out, while bearskin grew wet against the dewy grass. Now that line right there, it kind of seems like he's like, yeah, I'll give myself a little hooker's bath, pads up his nuts, and just runs out the door.
Well, I mean, like, this is an older story, so, like, showers are kind of a modern thing. Like, he probably just washed himself with a cloth.
Yes, this was my dad's cloth and my grandpa's cloth before that, and it's been washed exactly never.
Nice.
You've got to be quiet. If Mom wakes up, or Dad, or your dad, or even any of the hands, then they'll be like, "Come on in, or you'll catch your death of cold."
Do you come out here every day like this, Red? Real early? It's like the whole world's just yours, isn't it, Red? No one else around, and all like that.
I've been up for hours. Didn't you hear it last night?
Hear what?
Thunder.
Was there a thunderstorm?
I guess not, but there was thunder. I heard it. And then when I went to the window and it wasn't raining, it was all stars and the sky was getting some sort of almost gray, you know what I mean? Slim had never seen it, but he nodded. So I just thought I'd go out. They walked along the grassy side of the concrete road that split the panorama right down the middle of all the way down to where it vanished among the hills. It was so old that Red's father could not tell Red when it had been built. It didn't have a crack or a rough spot on it, though. Can you keep a secret?
Sure, Red. What kind of secret?
Just a secret. Maybe I'll tell you, and maybe I won't. I don't know yet.
Damn, Red.
Red broke a long, supple stem from a fern they passed, methodically stripping it of its leaflet, swung what was left in a whip-like fashion. For a moment, he was on a wild charger, which reared and champed under his iron control. Then he got tired, tossed the whip aside, and stowed the charger away in the corner of his imagination for further use. There'll be a circus around.
That's no secret. I knew that. My dad told me before we even came here.
That's not the secret.
Oh, okay.
Fine secret. Ever seen a circus?
Oh, sure, you bet.
Like it?
Say, there ain't a thing I like better.
Ever think you would want to be with a circus? I mean, for good?
I guess not. I think I'll be an astronomer like my dad. I think he wants me to be.
Huh? An astronomer?
Circus would be more fun.
You're just saying that.
No, I'm not. I mean it.
Suppose you had a chance to join the circus right now. What would you do? See?
I'd join up.
Go on.
Try me.
You mean that? You want to go in with me?
What do you mean?
I got something that can get us into the circus. Maybe someday we can even have a circus of our own. It would be like the biggest circus fellows in the world. That's if you want to go in with me. Otherwise, well, I guess I can do it on my own. I just figured I thought, let's give old Slim a chance.
Sure thing, Red. I'm in. What is it, huh? Red, tell me what it is.
Figure it out. What's the most important thing in a circus?
Acrobats?
Holy smokes! I would not go 5 steps to look at acrobats.
I don't know then.
Animals! That's what! What's the best sideshow? Where are the biggest crowds? Even in the main ring, the best acts are animal acts.
You think so? Because one time I saw an acrobat baby bird some skull in another acrobat's mouth on a trapeze. And now that was right impressive.
Now just imagine how much more impressive it would be if an elephant baby birded some skull into a crowd.
Wow, you know what? You're right. I don't know that.
Everybody thinks so. You ask anyone. Anyway, I found some animals this morning. 2 of them.
And you got them?
Sure. That's the secret. Are you gonna tell?
Of course not.
Okay. I've got them in the barn. You want to see them? They were almost at the barn. Its huge open door, black. Too black. They had been heading there all the time. Slim stopped in his tracks.
Are they big?
Would I fool with them if they were big? They can't hurt you. They're only about so long. Got them in a cage.
You just kind of like threw your arms around when you said they were so long, Red. I think they might be kind of big.
That's called a variance, Slim.
Oh, all right.
Upon entering the barn, Slim saw the large cage suspended from a hook in the roof, covered with a stiff canvas. We used to have some sort of bird or something in there. Anyway, they can't get away from there. Come on, let's go up to the loft. They clambered up the wooden stairs, and Red hooked the cage towards them.
There's sort of a hole in the canvas.
What? Oh, how'd that get there? Oh, they're still here.
The canvas looks to be burned.
You want to look? Or don't you? You're real focused on this burnt bit.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's a burnt hole. Yeah, I want to see it, Red.
As he said yes, the canvas had been jerked off. And there they were. Fuck. And there they were. The 2 of them, the way Red had said. They were small and sort of disgusting looking. The animals moved quickly as the canvas lifted, and they were on the sides towards the youngsters. Red poked a cautious finger at them.
Hey, you know, the way you jerk that off is kind of suggestive there, Red.
My dad taught
watch
me.
out with your finger there. Watch out.
They don't hurt you. Yeah. Have you ever seen anything like this, though?
No.
Can't you see how a circus would jump at the chance to have these?
Maybe they're too small for a circus.
Maybe they're too small for a circus. You're just trying to back out, aren't you?
No, I'm not. It's just
They're not too small. Don't worry. Right now, I've only got one word.
What's that?
Well, I've got to keep them till the circus comes, don't I? I've got to figure out what to feed them in the meanwhile. The cage swung and the little trapped creatures clung to its bars, gesturing at the youngsters with queer, quick motions, almost as if they were intelligent. End of part 1.
Damn. So now it's the astronomer and the industrialist. I'll be playing the part of the astronomer.
Yes. One other thing. The parts that are split up into this are essentially scenes. So for people listening, that was part 1. Part 2, it's going to transition to a different set of characters. It is just sort of how Asimov wrote this story, sort of giving different perspectives and everything into how this entire day happening.
Yeah.
Sort of subsequent timelines happening all at the same time, but written in different areas.
Helps you keep a story on a short timeline while still having a lot of content within it.
Absolutely. Also, it allows you to really flesh out a single scene that's happening across multiple areas in one part of the story.
Also, a great way to instill dramatic irony, we see this is very different from the Red Room. In this story, we, the audience, know a lot more than the individuals within the story. Because we get to see everyone's perspective. We get to hear what everyone is thinking and saying.
Mm-hmm.
On the other hand, the characters themselves, they only know their own personal point of view.
Mm-hmm.
So it's quite interesting.
Part 2. The astronomer entered the dining room with decorum. He felt very much a guest.
Where are the youngsters? My son isn't in his room.
They've been out for hours. However, breakfast was forced into them amongst the women some time ago, so there's nothing to worry about. Youth, Doctor. Youth.
Youth.
You really think they'll come? The day looks so normal.
They'll come.
You'll pardon me. I can't conceive you're playing so elaborate of a hoax. You really did speak to them, didn't you?
As I speak to you. At least in a sense. They can project thoughts.
I gathered that must be so from your letter. How, I wonder?
Could not say. I asked them, and of course, they were vague. Or perhaps it was just that I could not understand. It involves a projector for the focusing of thought. And even more than that, conscious attention on the part of both projector and receptor. It was quite a while before I realized they were trying to think at me. Such thought projectors may be part of the science they will give us.
Perhaps. Yet think of the changes it would bring to society. A thought projector?
Why not? Change could be good for us.
I do not believe so.
It is only in old age that change is unwelcome, and races can be old as well as individuals.
You see that road? It was built before the wars. I don't know exactly when, but it is as good now as the day it was built. We couldn't possibly duplicate it now. The race was young when it was built.
Then, yes. At least they weren't afraid of new things.
No, but I'd wish they had been. Where is the society of before the wars? Destroyed, Doctor. What good were youth and new things? We are better off now. The world is peaceful and jogs along. The race goes nowhere, but after all, there is nowhere to go. They proved that. The men who built the road. I will speak with your visitors as I agreed, if they come, but I believe I will only ask them to go.
The race is not going nowhere. It's going towards a final destination. My university
has a smaller student body each year. Fewer books are written, less work is done. An old man sleeps in the sun and his days are peaceful and unchanging, but each day he finds him nearer death, all the same.
Well, well.
No! Don't dismiss it. Listen. Before I wrote you, I investigated your position in the planetary economy.
And you found me solvent?
Why, yes. Oh, I see you are joking. And yet perhaps the joke is not far off. You are less solvent than your father. He was less solvent than his father. Perhaps your son will no longer be solvent. It becomes too troublesome for the planet to support even the industries that still exist. Oh, they are toothpicks to the oak trees of before the wars. We will be back to village economy. And then to what? The caves?
And the infusion of fresh technology, and the infusion of fresh technological knowledge will be the changing of all of this?
Not just new knowledge. Rather, the whole effect change of a broadening horizons. Look, sir, I choose you to approach this matter not only because you are rich and influential with government officials, but because you had an unusual reputation, for these days, of daring to break with tradition. Our people will resist change, and you would know how to handle them, how to see to it that...
The youth of the race is revived?
Yes!
With its atomic bombs.
The atomic bombs need not be the end of civilization. These visitors of mine had their atomic bomb, or whatever their equivalent was, on their own worlds, and survived it, because they didn't give up, don't you see? It was not the bomb that defeated us, but our own shell shock. This may be the last chance to reverse the process.
Tell me, what do these friends from space of yours want in return?
I'll be truthful to you. They come from a denser planet. Ours is richer in the lighter atoms.
So, what? Are they looking for magnesium? Aluminum?
No, sir. Carbon and hydrogen. They want coal and oil.
Really?
You're going to ask why creatures who have mastered space travel, and therefore atomic power, would want coal and oil. I can't answer that.
But I can. This is the best evidence yet of the truth of your story. Superficially, atomic power would seem to preclude the use of coal and oil. However, quite apart from the energy gained by their combustion, they remain, and always will remain, the basic raw materials for all organic chemistry. Plastics, dyes, pharmaceuticals, solvents. The industry could not exist without them, even in the atomic age. Still, if coal and oil are the low price for which they want to sell us the troubles and tortures of the racial youth, my answer to that the commodity would be dear if offered gratis.
There are the boys.
They were visible through the open window, standing together in a grassy field and lost in the animated conversation of youth. The industrialist's son pointed imperiously to the astronomer's son and nodded as he made off running towards the house. There's the youth you speak of. Our race has as much of it as it has ever had.
Yes, but we age them quickly and pour them into the mold.
Slim scuttled into the room, the door banging behind him.
What's this? I beg your pardon. I didn't know anyone was here. I'm sorry to have interrupted.
That's all right, youngster.
Even if you had been entering an empty room, son, there'd be no cause for slamming a door.
Nonsense! The youngster has done no harm. You simply scold him for being young. You and your views. Come here, lad.
All right.
What do you think of the country?
I like it very much, sir. Thank you.
My son has been showing you around the place, has he?
Yes, sir. Red. I mean.
No, call him Red. I call him that myself. Now tell me, what are you up to, huh?
Why, just exploring, sir.
Ha ha! There you are! Youthful curiosity and adventure lust. The race is not yet lost.
Sir?
Yes, lad.
Well, Red sent me in for something good to eat, but I don't exactly know what he meant. I didn't like to say so.
Why, just ask the cook. She'll have something good for you young'uns to eat.
Oh, no, sir. I mean for animals.
For animals?
Yes, sir. What do animals eat? I'm afraid my son is city bred.
Well, there's no harm in that. What kind of animal, lad?
A small one, sir.
Then try grass or leaves. And if they don't want that, nuts or berries would probably do the trick.
Thank you, sir.
Slim ran out again, closing the door gently behind him. Do you suppose...
Oh.
No, cut.
You suppose they've got an animal trapped alive?
It's common enough. There is no shooting on my estate, and it is a tame country, full of rodents and small creatures. Red is always coming home with pets of one sort or another. They rarely maintain his interests for long. Oh! Your friends should have been here by now, shouldn't they? End of part 2.
Ooh, part 3, spicy.
Spice to the dice of life. Take me to that oracle. I heard the time was borrowed.
Baby bird some skull on me. I'll give you my tomorrows.
That was a long cut. Just like our skull sponsor.
Wow. Oh my goodness.
So what are you thinking so far?
I love it, man. I think you've done a really good job, like, radio playing the shit out of this.
I appreciate that, but I can honestly tell you, this, as far as a play would go, I guarantee you any playwright would look at this and be like, this is trash, and I would smack them in the mouth, because I don't give a fuck what any janky old playwright says. Get a real job, and say, fuck your dad, you don't need to do the degree in what your job says. In which case, I mean, your degree is meaningless, fine arts is stupid, and all art is nothing except for perceivable by the audience. If you don't know your audience, you will fail.
Yeah, well, I think, art is art. Anybody can make art. That's the whole point of art. Like, people have been making art since we were fucking cavemen, so, like, you don't need a piece of paper that says, oh yes, you are legally allowed to make art. Like, you've done 4 years of becoming proficient at art. No, you just fucking do it until you're good at it and people like it.
And
or
one
maybe
day,
you're shit.
Maybe I'll be good at art. Part 3. The swaying had come to a halt, and it was dark. The explorer was not comfortable with the alien air. It felt so thick, almost as soup, and he had to breathe shallowly. Even so, he reached out in a sudden need for company. The merchant was warm to the touch. His breath was rough, and he moved in an occasional spattern he was obviously asleep. The explorer hesitated and decided not to wake him. It would serve no real purpose. There would be no rescue, of course. That is the penalty paid for high profits, in which unrestrained competition could lead to. The merchant, who had opened a new planet, could have a 10-year monopoly of its trade, in which he might hug to himself, or more likely, rent out to all comers at a stiff price. It followed the planets were searched for in secrecy, and preferably away from the usual trade routes. In the case such as theirs, then, there was little or no chance that another ship would come within range of their subetherics, except for the most improbable of coincidences. And even if they were in the ship, that is, rather than this cage, the explorer grasped the thick bars, and even if he had blasted those away as they could, they would be stuck too high in open air for leaping. It was too bad. They had landed twice before in a scout ship. They had established contacts with the natives, who were grotesquely huge, but mild and unaggressive. It was obvious that they had once owned a flourishing technology, but hadn't faced up to the consequences of such technology. It would have been a wonderful market, and it was a tremendous world. The merchant, especially, had been taken aback. He had known the figures that expressed the planet's diameter, but from a distance of 2 light seconds, he had stood up from the visiplane and muttered,
Unbelievable!
"Oh, there are larger worlds."
Inhabited?
"Well, nah.
Why, you could drop your planet into a large ocean and drown it.
Well, not quite.
And the inhabitants are large in proportion to their world?
Nearly 10 times our height."
Are you sure they're friendly?
"Well, it's hard to say. Friendship between alien intelligences is imponderable. They're not dangerous, however, I think. We've come across other groups that could not maintain equilibrium after the atomic war stage, and you know the results. Introversion, retreat, gradual decadence, and increasing gentleness."
Even if they're such monsters?
"The principle remains."
And back to the Zeppelin races.
And back to the space race. It was then that the explorer felt the heavy throbbing of the engines. "We are descending a bit quickly." There had been some speculation on the dangers of landing some hours before. The planetary target was a huge one for an oxygen water world. Though it lacked the size of an uninhabitable hydrogen-ammonia planet, and its low density made its surface gravity fairly normal, the gravitational forces fell off, but slowly with distance. In short, the gravitational potential was too high, and the ship's calculator was a run-of-the-mill model, not designed to plot landing trajectories at the potential range that was meant when the pilot needed to use manual controls. It would have been wiser to install a more high-powered model, but that would have meant a trip to an outpost of a civilization, lost time, and perhaps even the loss of a secret. The merchant demanded an immediate landing.
Don't you think the pilot knows his job? He landed you safely twice before.
"Yes," thought the explorer, "in a scout ship. Not in this unmaneuverable freighter." However, aloud, he said nothing. He kept his eyes on the visiplane, and they were descending too quickly. However, there was no room for doubt. Much too quickly.
Why do you keep silence?
"Well then, if you wish me to speak, I would suggest that you strap on your floater and help me prepare the ejector."
Oh, God.
The pilot fought a noble battle. He was no beginner. The atmosphere, abnormally high and thick in the gravitational potential of this world, whipped and burned about the ship. But to its very last, it looked as though he might be able to bring it under control despite that. He even maintained course, following the extrapolated line to the point of the northern continent towards which they were headed. Under other circumstances, with a shade more luck, the story would eventually have been told and retold as a heroic and masterful reversal of the lost situation. But, within sight of victory, tired body, tired nerves clamped a control bar with the shade too much pressure, and the ship, which had almost leveled off, dipped down again. There was no room to retrieve the final error. It was only a mile left to fall, and the pilot remained at his post to the actual landing. His only thought that of breaking the force of the crash, or at least maintaining the spaceworthiness of the vessel. He did not survive. With the ship buckling madly in a soupy atmosphere, few ejectors could be mobilized, and only one at a time. When, afterwards, the explorer lifted out of unconsciousness and rose to his feet, he had a definite feeling that, but for himself and the merchant, there were no survivors. And perhaps That was an overcalculation? His floater had burnt out while still sufficiently distant from the surface to have the fall stun him. The merchant might have had less luck, even than that. He was surrounded by a world of thick, ropey stalks of grass. In the distance, there were trees that reminded him vaguely. In the distance, there were trees that reminded him vaguely of similar structures on his native Acterian world, except that their lowest branches were high above what he would consider normal trees. Hello? Sorry. Hello?
Over here.
The explorer made his way towards him, thrusting violently at the coarse stalks that barred his path. Are you hurt?
I've sprained something. It hurts to walk.
I don't think anything is broken. You'll have to walk despite the pain.
Can't we rest first?
It is important to try to find the ship. If it is space-worthy, or if we can repair it, we may live. Otherwise, we won't.
Just a few minutes. Let me catch my breath.
The explorer was glad for those few minutes. The merchant's eyes were already closed. He allowed his to do the same. He had heard the trampling, and his eyes snapped open. Never sleep on a strange planet. The merchant was awake too, and his steady screaming was rumbling in terror. It's only the natives of this planet. It won't hurt you. But even as he spoke, the giant swooped down, and in a moment they were in its grasp, being lifted closer to the monstrous ugliness.
Can't you talk to it?
I can't reach it with the projector. It won't be listening.
Then blast it! Blast it down!
We can't do that! The phrase, "you fool," had almost been added. The explorer struggled to keep his self-control. They were swallowing space as the monster moved purposely away.
Why not? You can reach your blaster. I see it in plain sight. Don't be afraid of falling.
It's far simpler than that. If this monster is killed, you'll never trade with this planet. You may never even leave it. You probably won't live the day out.
Why? Why?
Because this is one of the young of the species. You know what happens when a trader kills the native young? Even accidentally. What's more, if this is a target point, means we are in the estate of a powerful native. This might even be one of his brood. That was how they'd entered their present prison. They had now carefully burnt away a portion of the thick, stiff covering, and it was obvious that the height from which they were suspended was a killing one. Now, once again, the prison cage shuddered and lifted in an upward arc. The merchant rolled to the lower rim and startled awake. The cover lifted and light flooded in. As was the case from the time before, there were two specimens of the young. They were not very different in appearance from the adults of the species, reflected the explorer, though, of course, they were considerably smaller. A handful of reedy grass stalks had been stuffed within the bars. Its odor was not unpleasant, but it carried clods of soil on its ends.
What? What are they doing?
They are trying to feed us, I should judge. At least it seems to be the native equivalent of grass. As the cover was replaced, and they were set to swing again, alone with their fodder. And that is the end of part 3. How did you feel about that, Mac?
I really liked it.
I thoroughly enjoy the story. I really hope to be able to come back to this story at some point.
I think it's a very cool story. I really admire the work that you put into it, honestly. Like, just going through the effort of making it readable like a radio play.
Well, you know what?
Like that takes a lot to turn a story into that. Like
I appreciate it, but of course, it wouldn't have even been kind of possible if I didn't have an amazing co-host such as yourself.
Oh yeah, someone who has at least 3 voices to use.
Someone who can read!
So, oh my goodness, yes, I am literate. Almost.
Hey, that is more than 10% of America.
Oh, this is America. Baby bird, some skull in my mouth.
Don't need to read. So yes, that is the first 3 parts of The Youth. We will, of course, link it in the description, and you can read ahead if you so choose.
Yeah.
By all means, please. I would love for you to check it out. Read the first 3 parts. Tell me how I did. Maybe tell me if I'm being too true to the story, or maybe even just be like, "Hey, Chance, you're garbage," and I'd be like, "Hey,
You're garbage.
appreciate the comment. It counts."
Well, I'm so surprised that some Brooklynite has decided to come and let you know how they feel.
Yeah.
Garbage.
Hey, yo, it's me, Joey Pizza.
Yes. Just trying to use. What are you gonna try and fuck some guy who isn't even named Joey Pizza?
But anyway, Mac, I feel like with that, our stories have come to an end.
Our stories have concluded. We finished reading them.
So with that, I figure we should let the people know what we're going to be doing next week.
Next week, we're bringing our own stories. Stories that we have written.
Yes. Stories that have been written by us and are not going to be waited until the nth hour.
I have written, 1 paragraph.
Yes, I have a title. And it's a good one! But with that, I guess our stories that we are going to be bringing to the table, we had some little writing prompts that we shot to ourselves. I believe you had the...
God. Yeah, I said milkmaid.
Milkmaid.
Yeah, I was once again put on the spot, and I once again really, really showed that I perform well when under pressure. Very much like the paintbrush situation, I brought milkmaid.
And here's it worked out. And I shot out oozes or slimes.
Ooh.
Hey.
That's like a whole creature subtype in Dungeons and Dragons.
You're darn tootin' it is. So anyway, we'll be bringing those next week, and I hope that you are all excited to hear them. If you would like, please write your own little stories with this prompt. Send them to us if you would like. We'll even read them on the show at some point in time.
Yeah, we've got socials. We've got an Instagram. That's at Fiction Friends.
We've got a Facebook.
That's also at Fiction Friends.
I thought it was like fiction_friends.
No, Facebook is just Fiction Friends. Instagram is fiction_friends.
Perfect. So with that, everybody, I have been Chance Love.
And I've been Mackenzie Elaine.
And we are the
Fiction Friends.
I wrote a story of bits of birds, blood eagles, that's the coolest way to kill someone. And I bet this the end, and so it's gonna be about hate that we keep doing this. Seconds outro songs. I think it's fucking great. The more times we do it, we're gonna do these outro songs. Fiction friends. Fiction friends.